Good morning and welcome to the October 27th, 2021 City Council meeting. We'll begin with the invocation to Councilman Westbrook, followed by the pledge. If you please stand.
Please pray with me. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, send down upon those of us who hold office in this city of Tyler the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose we may faithfully serve in our offices to promote the well-being of all people. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will begin with the minutes from September 8th, 2021.
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second. Motion by Westbrook, second by Curtis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we're going to have awards. We're going to come down while the video plays. As you can see, there are two folks that have been here for a total of 40 years. The first is Bob, or Robert McComb, traffic sign supervisor with 20 years of service. Bob can't be here, but we do want to recognize him for 20 years of service. And then we have Terrence Thedford, fire senior captain, 20 years of service. Terrence is here, so we'd love for you to come up and have your picture taken. She's up there. Terrence, we do want to just say thank you for 20 years. It's a long time. We hope you're here for another 20 years. You know, we got a lot of young folks that are coming up the ranks, so we need you to be around to teach them and mentor, and we appreciate your service.
Thank you, guys.
You bet. Thank you. All right, Z1. Kyle?
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This first request is a zone change from C1 Light Commercial District to C2 General Commercial District. The applicant's requesting the zone change to allow for an office warehouse on the property. As you can see, the properties are generally, or the adjacent properties are generally developed with commercial uses. The properties to the east are zoned for residential use. There is a creek that runs along the east side of the property that provides a natural buffer between this property and those properties. The request is consistent with the future land use guide, which identifies it as general commercial. Of the notices that were sent out, we did receive 0 in favor, but 2 in opposition, with a total protest calculation of 4%. The opposition was generally concerned with noise from any uses that would be on this property, but like I mentioned, there is a substantial natural buffer between the properties that would mitigate anything like that. So, of the Planning and Zoning Commission by a 5-0 vote recommended approval of the zone change from C1 to C2.
Thank you, Kyle. Any questions?
Yeah,
for
Kyle, so generally, what's the difference in the zoning there, the change 1 to 2?
Yeah, so the main difference is C2 will allow for outdoor display of merchandise or products or storage.
Okay,
So C1 and C2 are generally the same except for,
not a dramatic difference.
yeah, C2 is a little bit more intense because they might allow for outdoor display, and usually that might be a car lot or vehicle lot, but the applicant plans to just utilize the inside of the building. I don't think they plan to have anything outside, just for kind of your typical office warehouse that might be, you know, large inventory plus a showroom or an office area.
Any other questions?
Move to approve Z1.
Motion by Curtis, second by McGee. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. C2.
This next request is a request for a PMXD2 Planned Mixed Use District amendment of their site plan and the narrative. This property is located at the corner of South Vine and West Irwin Street. It was rezoned earlier this year to allow for a mixed use development. The applicant has submitted an amendment to adjust the building footprint and on the site. And as you can see here, this was the original layout that they proposed, and it had access or driveway access from South Vine Avenue. The applicant has adjusted the site plan to relocate that access to West Irwin Street with a gated entrance. Some other changes include reducing the sidewalk space on the West Irwin street front from 13 feet to 9 feet. The staff has reviewed the location of the gate, and elements have been incorporated into the PMXD2 narrative to mitigate any issues with cars backing up onto West Irwin from the gate. So the gate's set back far enough that shouldn't be an issue. We did send out notices for this request. No one returned in favor or in opposition. We did receive one with just a general comment about how potentially in the future they're concerned with if there's more people in the area that they may have concerns about their business operations. It's the property to the south, which is a plumbing supply store, which opens kind of early, and so they were just making everybody aware that they're still there. They plan to be there, and so if anybody moving into the area might just be aware of that. So the Planning and Zoning Commission by a 4-0 vote recommended approval of the amendments to the PMXD2.
Any questions for Kyle?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by McGee, second by Curtis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Z3.
So items Z3 and Z4 have been tabled by the City Council a couple times. The applicant has requested to keep the items tabled indefinitely. So previously they were tabled for 30 days, and that's why it's on the agenda today. But the applicant again is asking to table them indefinitely, which would require that if it were to come back on the agenda, we would have to reissue public notice for that meeting. So once we have sufficient notice of that, we'll do that. So at this time, like I said, the applicant wishes to table these indefinitely.
Any questions for Kyle?
I make a motion to table indefinitely Z3 and Z4.
Second.
Got a motion by Haney, second by Westbrook. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next request is a zone change request from agricultural district to C2 general commercial district. This is on East Grande Boulevard. The applicant's requesting the zone change to allow for the development of a self-storage facility on this property. The adjacent properties to the north are R1A and agricultural and are the location of an Encore easement. The properties to the east, west, and south are zoned agricultural but are developed with a mixture of commercial uses, a church, and some single-family homes to the south. The request is consistent with the future land use guide, which identifies the property as mixed-use center. The subject property is located along East Grande Boulevard. There has been changes in this area related to the zoning. The applicant at this time plans to develop self-storage facilities on this property. Of the notices that we received a one in favor, one in opposition, with a total protest calculation of 3.44%. The opposition was concerned with setbacks of the development, the spacing between the buildings and their property, and some of the operating hours and things like that, screening. So the applicant's, or the neighbor's property is actually is zoned agricultural. It does have some residential units, but there is commercial uses on that property as well. The Planning and Zoning Commission by a 5-0 vote recommended approval of the zone change from agricultural district to C2.
Any questions for Kyle?
Move to approve Z5.
Second. Motion by Curtis, second by McGee. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Z6.
Next request is a zone change from M1 Light Industrial District to R1D, single family attached residential district. The applicant is requesting the zone change in order to build a single family home. The adjacent properties to the northeast and south are currently undeveloped. There is a salvage yard. Actually, the property to the east is a salvage yard, but the development is actually on the east side of the property, not right adjacent to this property. And the properties to the west are currently zoned R1B and are developed with single-family homes. This request would amend the future land use guide from single-family, medium, low density to single-family and single-family attached. However, the size of the property would only allow one structure to be built, one detached single-family home, and that's what the applicant plans to do. The development of a single-family home in this area would help implement the Tyler First goal of adding more rooftops to the north end. Of the notices that were sent out, 0 were returned in favor or in opposition to the request, and the Planning and Zoning Commission by a 5-0 vote recommends approval.
Any questions for Kyle?
Move to approve Z6.
Second.
Motion by Wynn, second by Curtis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Z7.
Next request is a zone change from RMF multifamily and C1 light commercial district to C2 general commercial district. And the applicant is requesting the change to allow for the expansion of a used car lot. The adjacent properties to the north are zone M1 is M1 light industrial and is developed with commercial uses. The properties to the east and west are multifamily, but are developed with single-family homes. And the property to the south is currently zoned C1, but is developed with a single-family home. The request would amend the future land use guide from single-family, medium, low density to general commercial. The applicant, as you can see here, the applicant does have a non-conforming car sales lot on the property. The property does have 3 different zoning classifications, and the request is to clean that up and make them all the same zoning classification so they can actually utilize legally utilize the north side of the property for the sales lot. Of the notices that we sent out, 0 were returned in favor or in opposition to the request, and the Planning and Zoning Commission by a 5-0 vote recommended approval.
Any questions for Kyle?
Second.
Motion by McGee, second by Curtis. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Kyle. H1, Deborah.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. We're here today because according to the 2020 census, city council member districts are not of sufficiently equal population, and so the city must redraw in order to comply with the redistricting one person, one vote principle and established by the U.S. Constitution. If you will recall, back on October 13th, the council adopted redistricting criteria and submission plans. And so today we have our consultant from Bickerstaff, Philip Arnold, who's here to present draft or initial illustrative plan options. These illustrative plan options show proposed new boundaries for city council member districts, and they've been redrawn in an effort to attain the proportionate representation in each of the 6 single-member districts, and in order to comply to all the applicable federal and state redistricting laws. With regard to the criteria that the council adopted, as well as the other option plan submission guidelines, the consultant, Philip, will go over those briefly with you and then go ahead and present the draft illustrative plans. Following that, we'll ask that the council open a public hearing so that we can hear citizen comment on the draft illustrative plans. Philip?
Thank you, Ms. Full. Council members, we have a draft proposed illustrative plan as kind of a starting point that we came up with based on the census data to balance the districts. And we have remotely Drew Brown and Josh Crahan in our office, who are the GIS drawers, who are going to share the screen shortly, hopefully. And they will show us. What I'd like to start with is to look at the existing districts and the existing population in the existing districts. So here we have, let's see if we can get it up on your screens.
It's over there on.
Is it being broadcast? All right, here we go. So here we have the existing districts. Thank you. Okay. And this is City of Tyler existing districts as we have right now. Josh, could we move to the chart, the total population chart, please? And here we have the 2020 population in the existing districts. So we can see here, this first column is the number of people in each district. This is the, what we call the ideal size. So this is the total population of the city of Tyler, which is 105,917 people divided by 6. The deviation column, as we talked about before, is the difference between the ideal size and the total number of people in each district. So initially what I want to do is focus on what the issue is. So we have an overall deviation of 17%. That is the difference between the smallest district, which is District 3 here at 8.1%, and the largest district, which is District 5 at 9.01%. So what we need to do is make District 3 bigger and make District 5 smaller. That's the initial goal. Now that will have probably knock-on consequences for the other districts as we do that, because as we shift population around, particularly using whole voting precincts, sometimes you capture a lot of population and as you move it around the city. So, Josh, if we can move to our illustrative plan. Council members, the illustrative plan is our attempt to balance the districts. And what I'd like to do is start with this, and from here, this is just an idea. This is a way. There are a lot of ways to draw the districts. There are a lot of ways to make changes, but we thought this would be a good starting point. So as you can see on the top right, in this blue box here, says 9.06%. So that is, under our proposed illustrative plan, the total deviation between the largest and the smallest districts. So this puts you under the 10% threshold that you need to comply with the 14th Amendment. And Josh, if we could zoom in on districts 2 and 3 here at the southern boundary of District 2 and the northern boundary of, or southern boundary of District 3, northern boundary of District 2. And let me see. Josh, could we show the, I believe, is this the Plan A, Josh, or is this the current districts?
This is the Plan A.
Okay. All right. Could we show the council members the changes? I know there's a way to show the lines that have been moved. Okay, here we go. So this shows a little better. So you can see here, we took population from District 2 in this area and gave it to District 3. So you can see this red line at the bottom was the original, or is the proposed border between the two districts. The darker line here is the original boundary. Josh, could you take us around? I believe there were some other changes to the south. All right, and here, Josh, could you explain to them, it's hard for me to see the change here. I believe we took population from District 4 in this area and put it into District 2, is that correct?
So yeah, this was 4 and we gave it to 2, and it looks like this was 1 and gave it to 2.
Okay. And council members, we made this change in order to make up for the change in population that we gave from District 2 to District 3. And Josh, if you could scroll further south, I believe on the southwestern edge, District 1 picked up an area. So you see here this corner, kind of the southwestern corner of the city. This was in District 2. It doesn't appear to us to be contiguous to District 2, and that's why we moved it to District 1. There could be something that we're not aware of that connects this to District 2, but it does not appear from the maps we have. And it was probably the result of an annexation, I would think, over the years, and it was probably just put into District 2. But it should, because you can't split a district, you can't jump across the city to have districts. They have to be contiguous and touch each other. That's why we moved that to District 1. And this isn't Josh on the phone, this is Drew. I'm sorry, we had two drawers working on this. So I'm going to call you Drew, because you are Drew. Could you take us around? I believe,
no worries.
they're interchangeable. We could move over. There was a change here in District 4 and 5, I believe. Josh, if you could take us over there, or Drew, if you could take us over there. And council members, you can see here, this area was in District 5, and we moved it into District 4. Again, that was just to balance the population and trying to make as minimal changes as we could to do that. And Drew, are there any other changes? I don't believe there are any other changes we made to this map.
That looks like it's going to be it. Let me update these colors. They look like they're kind of blending together just to get a better idea of, which one is which. Yeah, that should be all the changes.
Okay. So that's a better look color-wise, council members. So one option we looked at as well, and this is something we can explore, so we can make any changes you want to. This is just kind of an introduction of what to do. One change we looked at doing as well, Drew, if you could zoom back into that last change between 4 and 5 that we did. There are different ways to kind of divide this territory. You can see there's good population in this area. So if we want to move population around, it doesn't take a lot of territory in order to move the population from one district to another. So one thing we did look at doing was moving, making the dividing line along Golden Road and kind of following down the I believe it's a railroad track here along the boundary between 6 and 4 and 5, and maybe Old Troop Highway. So that's an option as well to balance these districts. It did, with that change, let's see, Josh, Drew, could you pull up the chart at the bottom, the demographic chart for the initial assessment. So the demographic chart for the city population as it is. Can you pull it up in Edge and put it on top of the Plan A illustrative chart so we can see the differences here? All right. And can you all read that? Do we need to make it a little bigger? Okay. Drew, could we make it a little bigger? I think the audience wants a little bigger. Their screen is a little further away.
So the bottom's what it was and the top's what it is being proposed?
The opposite. The top's what it is now. The bottom is the what it will be under, or what it is under this illustrative plan.
Can you show District 1 on the bottom chart?
Oh, yes. Drew, could you make the bottom chart a little bigger? You're cutting off District 1.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. So you can see District 1 is mostly unchanged. Became slightly bigger by 0.05%, which is about 12 people. District 2 became smaller, increased in population. District 3 gained about 7%, 6 to 7% in population. District 4 kind of flipped from being about roughly 4% overpopulated or underpopulated to 4% overpopulated, and 5 decreased significantly by about 11%, and District 6 is unchanged. I don't know, Drew, your screen's flickering a little bit.
Sorry about that. Should be good now.
Okay. And then here you can see the demographic breakdown. And part of what we were trying to do was to keep the demographics roughly the same as they are now. Obviously, that's not entirely possible when you move population around, particularly with the Hispanic population in Tyler is just more spread throughout the city than the African American population, which tends to be more congregated together in a couple of districts. So you can see District 3 is roughly the same. There was a 0.3% difference in African American population, and about 0.5% population change in District 4 in African American population. District 5 gained about 0.5% as population in African American population as well. And District 2 was about maybe 0.8% in African American population. And then you can see similar minor changes throughout the Hispanic population as you go through. So this is our starting point. As I said, it's just a way of balancing the city and complying with the 14th Amendment. It is by no means the only way to do it. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to you all to ask us to make any changes that you want to see. So what we can do is ask Drew, he can move these lines and redraw a certain area or a certain district, and then this chart at the bottom, as he adds and subtracts territory from the different districts, will update automatically. So we can see in real time the changes and how it affects the population and the demographics of each district.
What is that area that went into District 1, that little rectangle? What neighborhood's that? Do y'all know, Stuart?
I do not.
I can't tell you.
One
Drew,
down
could
there on the
you
very south side.
zoom down to the southwest? There we go.
That one.
Is that the one by the church?
So it says Club Drive and Old Creek Boulevard.
Oak Creek?
Oh,
okay, that's
Yeah.
Oak Creek, I'm sorry.
Oak Creek, down on Jacksonville.
right there by the church.
It's right behind Bruno's, all that area, yeah.
And
That
you'll-
far down.
You know,
Oak Creek?
you are seeing annexation, some of that will be brought to you actually in future meetings, and just kind of growth that's going on in there that ultimately will probably kind of meet up, so,
Oh, that's where Tyler Athletic Club is.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, so north of the church.
And so you can see here in the middle, council members, is 215. That's the number of people in this voting district. So the population in this particular map, we can change it to have different layers of information. But this is showing you the population in each voting district, which is, of course, a subset of the districts. So over here you can see, for example, there's 507 people. So just to give you an idea of what these numbers mean.
Do y'all have anything that y'all want to see Philip redraw or change or?
Well, I do have a question in District 5. My proposal, well, first I have a question for you with regard to the voting precincts. Are the voting precincts going to change also too in this redrawing of?
The voting precincts are drawn by the county.
Okay.
And they take into account county and U.S. state rep and state senate districts.
Okay.
So as those have changed, the county will make changes to them. We have the state maps. The county is currently drawing its maps. I drew with them yesterday, as a matter of fact, and I think we're pretty close to a map with them. But we will work with them kind of after we have all the lines drawn to help them develop the voting precincts.
Gotcha.
And then typically, voting precincts don't really take into account the school district and city district lines as much. But if there's minor differences of a city street or something, we'll try to adjust the voting districts to minimize the total number of voting districts. So you don't end up with a voting district that's just a city block kind of squeezed in between two lines for some reason. But it's really much more of an administrative function in this day and age, because as cities have gone to citywide voting in large polling places, countywide voting, the voting districts don't serve the practical purpose they used to. They really are more of an administrative function for the elections administrator at the county level to divide up voters.
Exactly, because my initial snapshot was exactly along the line that you proposed, but it does divide the voter precinct number 23. And so
Yes.
that's, okay.
Yes. So we like to minimize the voting precincts that we split. We like to use whole voting precincts if we can, but sometimes the whole voting precincts have, sometimes they have no population in them for some reason, and that may be just because people moved, or it may be they just haven't been updated in a while. And sometimes they have quite a lot of population. So if you take a whole voting precinct and move it somewhere else, you end up moving, particularly in a city like Tyler, where we're not talking about moving a lot of people to balance the districts. If you move a whole voting precinct, you may end up moving 1,300 people, and that's a big chunk. So maybe you really just need to move 500 in order to balance the city, and moving the whole voting precinct would just create too much of an issue. So we do like to minimize the times we do that, but sometimes you have to.
Sure, okay. No, that's the only question I had. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Mr. Phillip, could you give me some boundaries as far as city streets are concerned for District 3?
Yes, ma'am. Do you want to see the change between District 2 and 3?
Exactly.
Okay.
Bring that back up.
So what we did here was to try to follow what appears to be kind of a natural boundary and is a major road.
Gentry.
It's Gentry Parkway. So that's why we picked that road. There are other ways to do it. You could follow other streets in there to do it, but it seemed as part of the guidelines and criteria we have is to follow major identifiable boundaries, whether that's a railroad track, a highway, a river, whatever it is. And this is a large road, so and I believe an FM highway as well, so it made sense to follow that as a boundary line. So the idea is so people know what the line is.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you.
So that's the only change
Yes, sir.
in District 3?
Yes, sir.
And what are the changes again for District 4?
District 4's changes were to the south between 4 and 5. And again, our idea here was to follow as much of a major street as we could. We chose to go east-west, but you could go north-south. There's different ways to make this change, and we can look at those if you want. But again, our idea was to really just pick a street that seemed to carry through. Drew, if you could zoom in on the boundary between 4, 5, and 6. So let's see, this is McDonald Road.
Yeah.
So it doesn't go all the way through to the next road is Troop Highway, because you can see outlined in green. The green outlines are the census blocks. So this is what the Census Bureau uses as its building blocks, essentially, when it is counting people. So it doesn't go all the way through, and so you kind of have this little weird triangle there, but that's about as good as we could do of finding a good east-west street, and that's why we chose that one.
And it's the appropriate one to choose if you're going to split it there, because they're different neighborhoods.
Yes.
Basically.
Well, and that's why we need input from you all, because you know your neighborhoods better than we do. And so there may be a better boundary that follows the neighborhoods and communities of interest that you know more about than we do. So I can look at it from a total population. I can look at major streets and natural boundaries. But there is some detail in here that just not living here and not being an elected official from here, I don't know.
I agree with you, Bob. That's an ideal street and area to make that change. And then the change you did in District 4 would be the western corner, moving that over to 2, because that was just a little area that was just sticking out that probably is more towards 2 from 4.
Let's look at that. Drew, could we look at moving some from 2 to 4? So it should be, yes, over there. Yes, and that again was to recapture some of the population that we had to give to District 3. So we looked at different ways to do that, and this made sense kind of following, again, a natural boundary of major roads. It had the right population numbers, and it was, you know, kind of some odd fingers that poked into District 2 anyway, so that's why we chose those particular blocks.
What road is that? Can you build it up?
Robinson.
Yes, Drew, could you zoom in there?
Yeah.
Okay, I see it now.
Can you zoom in a little more?
You Grace School right there too.
The P and Z item that we tabled indefinitely is in that area.
I don't, I'm scared. Okay, I see it
So it looks like Sunnybrook Drive?
now. Yes,
Okay.
okay, I see it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other comments or?
I just think, Philip, y'all did a good starting point. It'll be interesting to see what citizens think of your draft and what they come up with. You know, I'm District 4, probably a little more unique in that every district touches District 4, so when you shift somewhere, other district that hits 4, it's shifting 4. So y'all are juggling a lot of things up in the air, and I commend you for your start, but you know, I'll be real curious to see what citizen input we have and their thoughts on your initial plan and plans that they may have.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Everybody good? Before we go into the public hearing, can you explain the process for making a valid submission for consideration?
Yes, sir. So we have the criteria. So we have 2 resolutions that the council passed last time I was here, and we gave the initial assessment presentation. The criteria are the list of 9 criteria that the council should follow when drawing the map, and that we followed when we drew this illustrative map. The second resolution are the guidelines. And these guidelines are for members of the public who want to comment on plans and submit their own plans. So the guidelines are, there are 7 of them. The first one is that the plans, any proposed plans, should be submitted in writing and legible. And writing is obvious, just so we know and have a record of what the proposed plan is. And legible, obviously, so we can read it. The second guideline is that it should show the total population and voting age population for the African American, Hispanic, Asian, and Anglo or other minorities for each council district based on the census data. So because that will tell us what effects their changes have on the city council and in the makeup of each district. The third one is that any proposed plan should redistrict the entire city. And that's important because, as we can see, when you make a little change, so we took not a great deal of territory from District 2 and gave it to District 3, but that made District 2 underpopulated. And we had to go in and fix that by taking territory from 1 and 4 to give it to 2. And it's kind of, as you move the blocks around, the population around, it has knock-on consequences to the other districts. So you can't draw a single district in a vacuum is the idea. The fourth guideline is that any proposed plan should follow the same criteria that the city is following in drawing its plans. The fifth is that any comment should be submitted in writing and be legible. And again, oral comments are fine, but it's great to have them in writing so that we can go back and review them, so that if people submit comments to you all, you can send them to us or review them yourselves, but we have a record of what they are, and it's not just somebody remembering what somebody said. You know, recording it on video is fine, but sometimes it's easier just to read a comment on a piece of paper than it is to go watch a video. So that's more, it's just, quite frankly, administratively a little easier to deal with written comments. And then 6 is that any people submitting comments should identify themselves by their name and their home address. I think you all require that for your comments anyways. And that's so we know really just who the people are commenting and what district they live in, so we can get an idea of what their concerns are. And then the 7th one is that any comments or proposed plans should be submitted to City Council by the close of the public hearing. Now, y'all can choose to change that and accept comments and proposed plans as long as you want, but this is our proposed guideline. Is it allows people an opportunity to look at the proposed plan and then give comments, but there has to be a cutoff period at some point because we have to draw the maps. We do have a deadline of January 19th for the city because the candidate filing period opens on the 20th. So people need to know what district they're going to live in if they file for office, for example.
Okay.
So those are the guidelines. Do y'all have any questions about those?
And council, your last drawing session is November 10th. And so that would be an appropriate time if you wanted to set that as a final cutoff for submissions of plans.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Philip before we go into the public hearing? All right. We're now going into public hearing for this item.
Okay, if
I've
I
got-
may, Mayor, I'm sorry, real quick, just let Drew know. Drew, you can log off and stop sharing your screen, unless we need him on. He can stay on if y'all would like him to for any reason. But
Why don't we leave it on?
Yeah, might help
okay,
you once
all right,
once it's-
all right, Drew, if you'll hang on for a little bit, thank you.
We've got one
Will do.
card here from Mr. Lasea.
Oh, yes, and what time set, sir?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, thank you.
You can state your name and address for the record, please.
Elena Lisea, 1201 Belmont, Tyler, 75701. I've got a couple questions and some comments on the proposed. My first question is on those guidelines that we're supposed to adhere to, that you guys told us to. What resources is the city providing a citizen like myself to comply with that? Because you guys get the maps and the law firm and the software. What do we get? I mean, do we have access to that publicly? Will they sit down with us? Because we may say, can we change District 3 this way, but what's it doing to the other district? You know, I mean, how do we comply with listing, you know, how much Hispanic, how much Black? What resources is the city going to allow a private citizen to have to comply with that? You know, it's simple for you guys to do that because you have all this stuff. What do we have is my question. And then the other questions I have are on District 4. Looks like that's a pretty good move to get the area where Azalea Street and all of that past Donnybrook out of there. That looks like that's probably a pretty good idea because it's kind of just hanging out there. But then you put all of north of McDonald Road in there, which if you're looking at your own guidelines, those houses in there and those demographics are not homogeneous with District 4. Those are $1 million homes mostly. That's, you know, where the Hartleys live. That's where I think the Manziel Mansion is. Those are not homogeneous homes with what's on the east side of town. They're more homogeneous with what's in the Azalea district. I'll agree with that. But that's not really homogeneous. And as far as McDonald Road being a plain divider, McDonald Road turns into just a regular road like you would walk on in any neighborhood. And most people think me and my neighbor across the street vote for the same council person. You know, it dead ends into a neighborhood. It becomes a big street when you go over that light right there by the park, by the baseball park. But it does not do that in that neighborhood, and you're splitting up a neighborhood. And in my opinion, when you put that population in there, it's even further diluting the Hispanic vote. I don't know why any thought wasn't given to putting precinct 22, which is in Dr. McKellar's district over there, and getting that out of her district. That's got a lot of Hispanic vote in it. And I'm not just saying that tailoring this only to Hispanic, but that can be one of the guidelines. But putting that other portion north of McDonald Road does nothing to make that more competitive. It makes it less competitive, in my opinion. I'd like to see what the demographic differences are in that district with this drawing as opposed to how it was. Is this retrogressive? I mean, the voting rights tells you that you have to compare the new one to the old one. I'd like to see what the demographics are there. It may not be much of a difference, but to me it appears that that's going backwards. You're fracking the vote by not putting that portion of McKellar's district over there. So my questions to you are those is, you know, was there any thought to putting that area north over in the Douglas area into District 4? And what resources will be provided to us to try to paint a picture for you all that includes all the districts, because it's easy for y'all to do. It's not so easy for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Philip, if you will talk to us just a little bit about what the demographics are available through the Census Bureau. And also, I will say that the initial assessment that does have the total population in each district as well as the racial demographics is already up on the website. So that provides that information for where we are right now and how to compare where we are right now to what the proposed plans are. So you'll have both of those available. We will have this plan and those demographics as well put up on the website. So that will be there for you to be able to look at what the changes are.
Okay. Drew, if you could pull up, I'm not sure if you could pull up the thematic maps for the illustrative plan. Or for the initial assessment, I'm sorry. The thematic maps for the initial assessment.
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
Okay, if we could stick with that one and kind of zoom in on maybe the north half of the city. Okay, so here, council members, you can see this is the Hispanic Thematic Map. It is shows essentially concentration of Hispanic population within the city. It doesn't show total population. So I think I explained before that this just shows of these census blocks, the percentage of people who live in them who identify as Hispanic. It doesn't tell you how many people are there. So it can be a little deceptive as to population, but you can see the Hispanic population in the city of Tyler is mostly concentrated in the north half of the city. But it's really spread across the north half of the city. It's not concentrated in any particular neighborhood. So when we made changes to District 4, and really all of the districts, we were very conscious of trying to keep the demographics as much of the same as they are now. It's difficult to do with the Hispanic population in Tyler, particularly looking at the area between 4 and 5 where we made that change, because there is Hispanic population there, as you can see, but again, because the districts have to touch and they have to be contiguous, by the time you draw down and absorb a certain, trying to absorb a certain amount of Hispanic population, you end up absorbing a lot of Anglo population or other population as well. So that's why you can see the changes do make, it may change the Hispanic population by a percentage or two, but it's difficult to do that in Tyler just because there's not really a concentration of Hispanics in the city in a particular neighborhood. And I'll say, I mean, that's not really unique to Tyler. It's something we typically see, particularly in the northern half of Texas, is that Hispanic populations tend to be more spread out throughout a city instead of concentrated in certain neighborhoods. So it's difficult to necessarily capture that exact population.
But because this thematic map provides some indication of where a certain racial category or demographic is, it is helpful for anyone that might want to provide a proposed plan for city council, because you can see some of that and where it is.
Yeah, it is a useful map, and you can see, for example, at the southern end of District 5, there appears to be a Hispanic population down there. That's a large voting district, so it looks like large in territory and area. So it's probably not that heavily populated. But again, if you tried to make that into District 5 and connect them, one, you would have a line going all the way across the middle of the city to do it, and two, you would probably have to by the time you got down there and tried to capture that population of Hispanics, it would, to put into District 4, you would have to absorb a substantial amount of Anglo population on the line you would have to draw to do it. And that's what can make redistricting like this very difficult when you're trying to capture a certain population that's spread throughout a city.
And when someone provides when somebody provides a proposed plan, and they use these to, try to estimate what they're, wanting to put in one district and another, we're not asking them to give us exact population amounts that they're moving back and forth. Just give us an estimate, make sure that they have addressed all of the districts, and then we can go back to the demographer and they will inform the council consultants about if there's any deviations or amounts of population that proposal misses in terms of our criteria, right?
Yes, and on that, I mean, one thing I'll say that we see occasionally when the public submits maps is that and I've even had this from elected officials who've used online maps to draw to submit, is that the online tools are good, but they may not be exactly the same as the city limits, because the Census Bureau will define the city of Tyler city limits slightly differently than the city of Tyler defines its city limits. Our map is based on the data we receive from the city in shape files, which is a file format, a mapping file format. And we verify that and check it with the city. The Census Bureau may be off, and it may not be by much. It may be by a sliver here and a sliver there, but as you go around an entire city, those slivers add up. And it may just be 50 people, but oftentimes we'll see the Census Bureau has a slightly different population than our total population for the city, for example. And it's common, and it's because of these tiny little slivers, and it's the way the census creates it. I'm not a GIS specialist, but I've had them explain it to me. It's very technical, and I can show you example maps of it, but you can see, because the city of Tyler is fairly uniform in shape, but a lot of cities are not. And a lot of them, particularly something like Houston, that has a lot of canals, there's a lot of water. They have Kingwood way off to the northeast that they have little fingers sticking out everywhere, and it's really easy in that situation for the Census Bureau to be off by just a little bit and include some county territory in the city limits, or miss some city territory and think it's part of the county. And that's why you get that. Now, in the grand scheme of things, 50 people out of 103,000 is not a lot. So that's why the Census Bureau isn't as concerned about having it absolutely perfect for every city in the nation, because from a statistical point of view, it's not relevant. But when we get into the granular details of drawing the city, that's my only caution, is just to make sure that we have the right city limits, to make sure in that we can, as we review those plans for you, analyze that and make sure, clean up the edges, make sure the population's correct, make sure we have the right city limits. We put that into our software and clean it up. It takes some effort and it takes some time, but it's absolutely something we can do.
Okay.
Before we get Mr. Lasea back up, to piggyback up on what Deborah was saying, if Mr. Lasea wants to draw a map, are the resources available on the website to where he'll have the data to do what he may want to do?
I cannot personally say that because I have not tried them, but I have seen them and I have analyzed them, and I have had sent them to our GIS people to analyze. So I know people have done it, but I have not personally done it, so I can't tell you what website to go to. But I have had, for example, city council members from other cities draw a proposed map and send it to us. So I know it exists, but I don't have personal knowledge of how well it works. But in that example, where a city council member sent me a map, we did have a slight difference in the city limits, and that's something I'm analyzing for them, or our GIS people are analyzing for them, so I can explain. And that city was very small, and the difference was 50 people. But in that city, the 50 people made a big difference. And so that council member wants to know why, why her map was different than what we got when we put it into our system. So, all that to say is I know it exists, but I can't vouch for it, and I can't tell you the best place to go to do it.
Okay. Mr. Lasaya, do you want to come back up for a minute?
If it's okay.
Sure.
I didn't use it for my time, so. Elena Licea, 1201 Belmont. Can you bring back up the one before this where he zoomed in on this one, please? On the red one with the Hispanic population. And on what Mayor Warren just said, I appreciate you want us to get access to that, but there's nothing out there that consolidates all of this for a private citizen. It'd be nice if myself or him or her or whoever could sit down with them. They're doing this for you. They're not doing anything more for me than they would be doing for you. You tell them, I want precinct 22 out of here. What does that do to everything else? And then they just realign everything. I mean, it's what they're already doing for you guys. But on this one right here, if you'll look, basically what I was talking about is you're taking this portion where you see the square is, you're taking that, which is almost white. You see the bottom right-hand corner of that square. You're taking that and you're going even further down underneath that, which is mostly color white. That tells you it's little to none Hispanic. Okay, little to none Hispanic down in there, as opposed to putting up in the right upper hand corner of that square, you're drawing a black line. It's already there between all that red. That's just common sense. You're taking and putting in more white, which is less Hispanic. If I'm missing something, let me know. Please point it out. And you're dividing that red vote up there, which is all Hispanic. And that's right in that Douglas area. I know this district very well. That area has over 300 voters in it. Most of that went for Reynoso last time. Most of that is Hispanic. But you're splitting that up and putting it in two different districts and adding more non-Hispanic vote to District 4. I don't understand why that's being done if we're trying to at least make an effort to make that district more competitive. And if I'm missing something, your law firm's here, please let me know. And as far as what Mayor Warren said, I'll be happy to sit down with them anytime, or a group of us can sit down with them. If you just don't want to hear it from Elena, if you want 4 or 5 other people in the room, we'll be happy to sit down with them and say, what happens if we put this precinct in or this one out and shift that around? That's all they're doing for you guys anyways. So.
Okay, thanks for your comments. One thing I will say from reading
This is the old map.
The dialogue.
Just as a point of clarification, this is the existing map.
That's the existing map.
This isn't one of the proposed ones. And so when Mr. Lasaya was saying that, you're cracking it, this is what already exists. Does that make sense?
Say it again.
You're not, the question was on the comment was that you are, with this map, you're cracking or breaking up the Hispanic population that was up there in that upper corner. This is the existing map. This is the existing districts.
Well, and this is where I'm going with it. If you look at the two indexes of change in race, from where it was before and where this new map is, you've got a decrease of a Hispanic population of 0.87 of 1%. So it's not, I'm not sure what number you just threw out, but it wasn't a huge number.
No, I didn't say a number. My only saying was what you're adding when you go down to McDonald Road is almost solid white in color up there, which means there's less Hispanic vote. I didn't throw out a number. I don't have that number. That's what my question was to them is, under the retrogression standard, what have we gone down? So it could be half a point, it could be 0.8, whatever you say it is, Mayor. If that's what they're telling you, that's fine, but it is going backwards as opposed to trying to increase that. So we're not, in other words, the district, the way it's being drawn now is 0.8% less Hispanic is what you're telling me? That figures. Yeah.
All right, thanks for your comments. We don't have any other cards, but I do want to open it up if, Mike, if you want to come up for a minute. Name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Mike Starr, 2725 Pecan, District 1. I just have questions today. It looks like what's been presented for this initial draft is in voting age population, VAP, as opposed to citizen voting age population, CVAP. The Fifth Circuit standard is CVAP. So if this can be presented in CVAP, we'd like to see that, but also have that for future drafts going forward. The only other comment that I really have or question is I know one of the criteria is basically the entire size of the district, elongation versus more compact. The least compact district, it appears, in the city is 2. And while the very bottom of District 2 in the southwest, a little rectangle with, looked like to me, some 200 votes has been addressed. The area immediately to the north of that, it appears, has not been. That would seem to be an area for further exploration with regard to helping District 2 become a more compact and less elongated district across a large part of the city. Thank you.
Hey, Mike, what'd you say the CVAP was?
It's citizen voting age population as opposed to voting age population.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Anybody else wish to come up and speak to this item before we close the public hearing?
Mayor and Council, within the initial assessment that is currently up online, we also have all of the thematic maps along with it. So what you've got to see today in terms of where special racial categories are, they are there and available for the citizens to use in terms of proposing their own submissions. And we'd ask everybody to do that, use that. We'll provide whatever information that we can to them. And once they submit their plan, then we can review it. We can have our demographers and consultants look at that and provide some feedback in terms of if it misses the mark on some of the criteria or not. If it's something that is useful to the council, it definitely will be used.
Okay. Any other comments or questions before we close the public hearing? All right. Well, the public hearing is closed, now closed. We are going to go into executive session. I'm going to read all this, so I'm doing the right thing. As allowed by the Texas Open Meetings Law, Chapter 551 of the Government Code, the City Council may go into executive session to consider the following under Section 551.071, consultants with attorney regarding the following. Receive advice from counsel regarding the city's redistricting obligations. A governmental body may consult on legal matters which are not related to litigation or to settlement of litigation in an executive session with its attorney on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct, the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with the Act. Any final action to be taken by the City Council will be taken in open session. Okay, we are gone to executive session.
the other. If this is good or bad, we're just saying it's an option.
Mayor says we need another hour.
He's waving at you. All right, we are back from executive session, and we do not have any action. Therefore, we shall continue with R1. Kedrick.
All right, welcome back. Mayor Council, you have item R1 before you. His request, the City Council consider adopting a resolution appointing City of Tyler representative to the Smith County Appraisal District Board of Directors. The City of Tyler is entitled to select one board member for Smith County Appraisal District. Former Tyler City Council member Mark Watley holds that current position, and it expires on December 31st, 2021. The SCAD board member selected for the City of Tyler will serve a 2-year term beginning January 1st, 2022. Attached is a resolution to be filled in with the name of the appointee and voted on by City Council. Former City Council member Mark Watley has indicated that he's interested in serving another term. So it is requested the City Council consider adopting a resolution appointing the City of Tyler representative to Smith County Appraisal District Board.
Any questions or comments for Kedrick?
I do. Are there any term limits on that?
As far as I know, there's not any term limit.
I move that we adopt the resolution where we appoint Mark Whiteley to that board.
Second. Got a motion by Westbrook, second by McGee. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. R2. Chief.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
Chief.
Presentation.
Cassandra.
She's more than happy to have her speak for us if she wants to.
Yes.
Cassandra, will you make their presentation for them?
I don't think she heard you.
I want to leave you guys out. Morning, Mayor and Council. Been a long time to get here. Over the last year and a half or so, we started this process of going through with updating the contract with UT Health East Texas EMS as we continue our commitment with them as the radio providers for us. As we move forward, our next step was to look at not only our contract and what we're doing with them, but our radios that we use every day. The radios we have here are probably the most vital piece of equipment we have as police officers and firefighters. We've had these since 2009. They are being phased out as they're no longer supported by Motorola as the new models come on. And some of the things that we are dealing with is that if they break down, we can't get them repaired and other stuff like that. So we want to make sure that our officers and firefighters have the best communications equipment they can. This agreement today is coming to ask for a resolution for us to move forward with the city manager. It'll include 307 handheld radios, including 85 for the fire department, 212 for the police department and municipal court, in addition to 161 mobile radios. So as we move forward, all those will be put into a purchase at one time. We'll replace a little over 468 of our public safety radios as we modernize that equipment and get ready to move forward. So,
Yeah, this should set us up for the next decade. So we've gone a little over 10 years with the system we have. It's no longer being supported by Motorola. So it is a concern of our firefighters. Once Motorola told us a couple of years ago that they were no longer going to support our current radios, fire and police officers, they started thinking, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And so police chief and I have been working on ways
we've really talked about this for a couple of years. How can we finance this? How can we get it done? And so we came up with this method after exhausting Smith County 911 and some other people we were looking for funds with, and this will take care of us for the next decade.
The cost is easy as we move forward with Motorola Solutions and mobile communications is the $1,858,748 for the actual purchase of the radio equipment itself, which includes the installation into all of our vehicles and everywhere else, the police department, fire department, and municipal court. But it also includes the region's financing the agreement with the for them to go forward with the purchase lease agreement. And we come here today requesting that the City Council consider authorizing the City Manager to execute and take all actions appropriate to carry out a purchasing, financing, lease agreement with the Regions Financial Corporation for the purchase of public safety radio equipment for Motorola Solutions Incorporated and HGAC, which is the Houston Galveston Area Council, in the amount of $2,036,236.08. Any questions?
What fund are these paid from?
We have budgeted funds that are in our existing budget right now through our IT accounts. The financing we did 11 years ago just made the final payment last year. We carried those forward in our existing budget, and we'll continue making the payments out of it, and I guess out of the general fund.
Chiefs, in this order of equipment, are there any extras? You add somebody, how quickly can you get if a new policeman, new fireman that needs a radio?
That each one of those has a couple built into it. You know, we actually have 202 authorized officers right now. There's 212 in there for us for like handhelds. It allows for that expansion, but also a radio to go down. And then for the ones that we are in our possession now, they're still in good working condition. We plan on holding those as a reserve. I think the fire department plans on using them for training, so they don't have to use the brand new radios in that portion. But anyone outside the city, whether it's the park department or somewhere else, as a radio goes down and can't be serviced, we'll have these spares to put those back into service to kind of hopefully save some funds long term, so we don't have to replace 500 or 600 radios citywide.
And that was my second question, whether the old radios had any value left that resell or use in turn. So you're going to use in turn.
Yes, also for the fire department, the majority of our portable radios are on positions, not with individuals. Different than the police department, they have to work alone most of the time. We work as a team. So each one of our vehicles have a radio assigned to that position. So as they rotate out every third day, that radio, 3 different people use it based on the position on the truck. So they'll have it while they're on shift, but then it goes back onto the truck, and then the next shift comes in the next day and they use that same radio. A little different with the police department, they must keep their radio with them all the time. So it's assigned to an individual police officer.
And there's significant improvements with these for shock impact improvements. They got aluminum substructures inside of them. The stuff for the fire department, theirs are actually kind of a yellowish green that are heavier duty and fire resistant, I think including the cords and the actual microphone itself are water resistant.
Also designed so that if we have a situation where there's an explosive around, they won't set off the explosive.
Any other questions for Chief or Chief?
I don't know if this is a question that y'all will know the answer to, maybe Kedrick would. What about some of those COVID funds that we have set aside? Is that a possibility to apply to this as well?
To avoid the financial.
Pay cash.
Yeah.
I think right now we've set up the actual payments as we go forward. If they choose to do something else afterwards, that'd be up to Kedrick or the city.
The ARPA funds, I'd have to go back and look. I do feel that you could possibly make an application of these for that.
If there's some way that we can tie it to COVID response, that is a good possibility. I can't tell you that 100%. We would probably have to check with the federal government, make sure that that's okay. But if we can link it to that, then that could be a possibility, and we can check into that.
You could say
$77,000.
Yeah, I mean that would save that financing charge, and just thinking off the cuff, you could say if there's an increase in crime, people staying home, COVID has related to that increase in crime, tie it back to that for.
Well, on just the public safety, public health side. So let me ask this: if council would prefer to see utilization of ARPA funds towards just doing cash instead of the financing agreement, then the best bet probably would be to postpone this item for decision until November, so we can bring it back to you. Would you agree, Ketrick, or do you think that if they wanted to say, go ahead?
Yeah, we would have to check with regions. We got quotes from Motorola, regions, and BB&T. We'll just have to see if they could hold the interest rate until that time period. But I think through the 1st of November, they probably would hold that rate for us.
Well, but I'm not gonna be able to take a decision until after November 10th.
Yeah, I think initially, I think it's 45 days is what they would hold the rate for.
But even, we have other kind of the COVID funds we kind of put aside in the rainy day fund. So really, I guess the question before them is, they want a financing plan or they want to use cash? Because the cash is available either way.
We could check into it, and rates are not gonna change that much. If we have to go back out to market, I don't think they're gonna change that much in a short period of time.
The only question I have is, how much of a delay would that delay delivery of the radios? Is it gonna negatively impact?
I think when I spoke with Motorola, you know, a good way for us would be to look at about 3 months for delivery once ordered. If we get there, barring there being some catastrophic supply issue, but we haven't experienced that yet.
Thank you. I think it's reasonable.
Could we not just make the motion based off of, whether the funds are available or not? Add that into the motion?
The difficulty is with the kind of the use of ARPA funds is then going to, we have, one, make sure that we can, but I'm pretty certain we can probably make that argument for the use of ARPA funds. Now, remind you, the ARPA funds, that you pull that down on that cash side, that means that that's cash that's no longer available for other projects that you might want to have had it under consideration. So you're losing a little bit of kind of essentially cash on hand to use towards projects that you may have also wanted to consider as you're paying for this, which is the reason we kind of look at the financing side of this, so that it is additional amount, but because of the amount that you're buying and the time that you're having these and having them in service, we kind of have see that for the interest rate that you're paying for it is acceptable. So it really kind of comes down to y'all to kind of the policy direction piece of, are you okay with, hey, let's move forward, it's a timely manner, but you're going to be paying the interest rate piece on it, or instead pay cash, but you're going to reduce the amount of cash that you have to be applicable for future projects that you could have also used the ARPA funds towards.
And see, I probably have a little heartburn with that, just because we haven't discussed as a council how we are going to spend the ARPA funds. I know we've got a list that we've kind of generated and started, but we've not had a agenda item or anything publicly or otherwise to figure out how we're going to spend it. So I almost hate to just catapult into, let's spend 2.5 or 2 million here.
Yeah, we can check the lease agreement. I do think all that's required is maybe a 30-day notice. So I think, if you want to move forward with the lease and then we decide, if we want to use the ARPA money, and there will be some interest rolling, but we could pay whatever interest we've accrued and pay the principal off. If you want to move forward today.
I'm all for getting the new radios. I just want to explore all financial possibilities, especially if it's going to save us $188,000 if that's a better route. But like you said, that's not something we've discussed yet.
Yeah, it seems like a good way to go about it is if we're going to approve it today as it is, approve it, and then look at the ARPA situation, we can reconsider it.
Yeah, there's not a prepayment penalty, is there?
As far as I remember,
check and make sure.
But if you all can approve it, we'll go back, we'll check the lease. What I remember reading was, I think it was a 30-day notice that we had to give on that.
And I think that goes back to Councilman McGee's question is, can we approve it, have a motion today subject to looking into those funds? Isn't that what you were saying?
I would recommend that if you approve it today, go ahead and do that, but they would need to bring it back to council
Yeah.
if something changes with the amounts, how you paid it, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, perfect.
And just as a preview of things to come, you know, it's, well, I think for the fire engine, we're paying for cash, straight up for that one, coming up coming up next. You do have body cameras, Chief, and I met with just as far as Tyler Patrolmen's Association yesterday, and the conversation about the body cameras and the need for replacement of all the body cameras on the police officers, and additional ones. That one, we're looking at financing that one as well, just because of that cost. So as you're purchasing all of that at once, to be able to bring in, for replacement. So you're gonna have some of these other things, kind of especially public safety wise, throughout the year, maybe even into next year, that are gonna pop up that will be financing type options. So that, as you kind of think of this on the ARPA piece and generalize, kind of a general idea of, well, maybe then there's some opportunities to potentially pay down any as far as interest rates that you'll be paying in the future towards that. Maybe kind of think of that on the big picture as the mayor opens up the ARPA fund discussion in the future.
Mr. Mayor, obviously, this is a safety issue, so I make a motion that we grant the city manager opportunity to disperse these funds or approve, and if anything changes, then they bring it back to us later.
Okay, got a motion?
Second.
Motion by McKellar, second by Westbrook. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Chief, you gonna stay here for this one?
Yeah, Chief Coble's around for the next one too.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Spending lots of money.
Item M1 is our request that City Council consider authorizing the city manager to purchase a Pierce Custom Enforcer aerial platform ladder truck for the fire department from Saddams Martin Emergency Group, Houston, Texas HGAC contract number FS12-19. The fleet replacement fund is where this purchase will be coming from. Fleet and fire work together to put the agreement together for Saddams Martin Emergency Group. Pretty much it's through the Houston Galveston Area Council. And the total purchase of this new ladder is gonna be $1,393,095.45. The time to build this unit out is gonna be about 13 to 14 months. And with that said, Chief's here also, but we recommend that council approve the city manager to purchase the Pierce Custom Enforcer aerial platform ladder truck for the fire department from Saddams Martin Emergency Group, Houston, Texas, HGAC contract number FS12-19. Any questions for this one?
Chief, can you tell us a little bit about the ladder truck? I know you
Good
want
morning
to.
again, Council and Mayor. This is a platform truck, so it's a 100-foot aerial platform. It would give us capabilities we do not currently have. Also, it will give us full ladder coverage of our city. Right now, there's a couple of gaps on the southeast side. This, located at Station 10, will give us overlapping coverage of the city and a very substantial move in fire protection coverage for the city of Tyler.
Any questions for Chief? How about for Leroy?
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by McGee, second by McKellar. Any further discussion?
One more thing. I'm sorry. We are paying cash and we're saving $41,000 by paying cash for this truck. I thought that was really important to add to the list from my previous conversation.
That's what I like to
Good
do.
job. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks. All right, we are to the consent agenda. Does anything need to be pulled or approved as is?
Mayor, just as a point of recognition, CA3, it was requested actually by the vendor to pull that to, because we kind of want to rework the caption to specifically name the vendor for that to be able to be purchased through the buy board. Or so for that one, we'll ask to be pulled, and you'll see it again at your next meeting.
Okay.
Other than that, I'll move to approve the consent agenda with that one exception.
Second.
Motion by Westbrook, second by McGee. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, just a few items of note. On Saturday, October 23rd, the Oakwood Cemetery Restoration Committee had its annual Spirits of Oakwood historic walking tour through Oakwood Cemetery. Guests followed tour guides to visit grave sites and view reenactments of local historical figures. The event usually coincides with Azalea Trails in the spring, but was canceled in 2021 due to COVID-19. This year's fall return was deemed a great success. And so this is the Oakwood Cemetery Restoration Committee, which has actually been organized in 1997 and been very active. Has worked with our Tyler Parks Department since that time and been able to do fundraising to be from the Spirits of Oakwood event and other things to help repair broken monuments and make further improvements within that cemetery. Next year, Spirits of Oakwood will resume its regular schedule in the spring of 2022 with the actual date to be determined. Christmas season is about to be upon us before we know it, and one of the things we're very excited about is downtown has been selected as a neighborhood champion for Small Business Saturday again. Small Business Saturday was created by American Express in 2010, and this nationwide program is meant to showcase how the community's small businesses are the core of every thriving neighborhood. This program is established for the Saturday after Thanksgiving to encourage people to shop small and bring more holiday shopping to small business. And this year's Small Business Saturday is going to be on November 27th. We're working with our downtown businesses on promotions and engaging activities. We created a Facebook event, and we'll be updating it with full details soon. So as you're looking to buy your special someone's Christmas gift, remember to shop small when you're starting your holiday shopping and all year long. We want to recognize one of our employees, the Tyler Police Department, Lisa Blackman. We're very proud of her. She was recognized for her outstanding performance by the Texas Association of Property and Evidence Inventory Technicians. And she was the Property Technician of the Year for the state of Texas. It was a great job by Lisa, and our police department, our city, is very proud of her and her accomplishments in making sure that property and evidence is, as far as collected, taken appropriately and maintained, as that is the essential for making good cases by our police department and for the prosecution of those. And finally, the Glass Recreation Center's new gym floor repairs were completed on last Tuesday, and the multi-use courts, including basketball, volleyball, and pickleball, were, as far as finished on those. If you haven't had a chance to go by the Glass Recreation Center and see the city seal and how well that new gym floor looks, please do go by there. In addition, our contractor was able to get the brickwork needed for the completion of the Bergfeld Park tennis courts, and has begun the masonry needed for that project. This is the final part of that improvement project and has been delayed due to waiting for needed materials in order for that piece to move forward. And so we're very excited as that masonry work has begun this week and look to be able to complete the tennis courts relatively quickly. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Any comments for the city manager before we adjourn?
Any update on the hiring of the city engineer or any of the other positions?
For the city engineer position, we have actually gone back out for that one. We did have some finalists that we interviewed, and as we looked at the position and how they matched, we made a decision that they weren't they weren't necessarily a good match for those positions, and so we've been able to we're beginning the process of search for that is city engineer. Our interim city engineer has been doing a great job of kind of keeping the position filled. He's not looking to go anywhere soon, so that gave us kind of the luxury of being able to make sure that we hire the appropriate person for that is the match for our community and our culture. For some of the other ones, we've been able to get some of those different positions filled, especially on the development engineering side. I know there was in conversations about one of the hires, and it was about really kind of looking at the financial part of that for the compensation.
Thank you.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.
Everybody.